morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. This is Reverend Hung Sher coming to you from the Gold Coast of Queensland, Australia. Today is Saturday, April 10th here in the Gold Coast. Should be Friday, April 9th for those of you in Northern California, other places. Today we're going to be looking into the Dharma Flower Sutras chapter on Guanshi Bodhisattva, the awakened being who hears the sounds, the cries of the world. And I understand that Ron is going to be our Dharma requester. Here is our Dharma request text. So I'm going to ring the bell 3 times and then ask Ron to help us request Dharma. So if you'd like to put your palms together, please do. Here we go. Okay, Ron, would you like to start?
恭敬大德三听，为此法会给予众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无上。Will the
Right. Okay. Go ahead, please.
Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss, and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Okay, I'll give you a line, you give it back. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye olahudi sammyao sanputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi sanmyao sanputoshe.
All right. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered throughout billions of eons. But now we see it, hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay, thank you, Ron. That was our Dharma request. Appreciate it. And once again, good morning to everybody. It's early in the morning here in the Gold Coast. The kookaburras haven't gotten up yet. They haven't owned the morning with their wake-up call. So we know that we're early when we beat the kookaburras. People who would like to hear a translation of today's talk in Chinese can find the button on the right side that says translation, and they can find Mandarin there. 如果大家想听中文的翻译就那个控制板右下边有一个叫 translation， 你可以找中文有义工帮忙翻译中文。If someone would like to hear a Vietnamese translation, open your chat box. You see where it says chat? There is a separate link for a Vietnamese translation. So you can listen to the sutra lecture in the language of your choice. We're very grateful to the volunteers who are making this lecture possible to everyone. And as I look at the names of the friends who are online with us today, truly, truly, we are a global community. This is just amazing. Wowie, it's great. And I'm really glad that we have friends dialing in from China as well. Expanding our Chinese listening community has really added some new life to our lecture series here. So in days past, I was really happy to go down the list of all the participants who were here and getting to know everyone that way. We've grown, and what that does is it makes it kind of slow to mention everyone, and just wanted everybody to know how much I appreciate your listening in. And if I was thinking how to make everyone's participation one step closer to the reality of an actual community, and certainly open to suggestions about how to do that. When it's a sutra lecture, there's less opportunity for questions, for Q&A. But that's still a possibility if we wanted to think about a way to allow folks to, when you're moved to genuinely have a question that arises, to be able to either open your mic and ask, unmute yourself, or to ask by tapping in a note and having the moderator unmute you. There are various ways to do it that would make it a genuine conversation. I think that would be ideal. So thinking about it. Other things we could do, I have something very special today, which I'm going to open right this minute and show everybody. What do we have here? We have a new sutra text, bilingual, actually 3 languages, because it includes Bopomofo here. This is a brand new bilingual version of the Pumantin. You can see the title here in Hanzi and also Loma Pinyin, and also English translation. The translation, first by Dharma Master Kumarajiva back in the 5th century, but then also translated by the Buddhist Text Translation Society and Dharma Buddhist University just recently. We have a beautiful Buddha image. We have 2 images of Guanyin, awesome thousand hand, 1,000-eyed Guanyin, and a stained glass Guanyin. And for those who like to recite the sutra, we have the incense praise in 2 languages. And our opening. And here's the sutra. Isn't this lovely? Really appreciate the kindness of the volunteer who is on the call today but prefers not to be named, for making the effort to produce these beautiful sutra texts. It's still a work in progress. It's not complete. So how was I thinking about making the community a tad closer? The idea was making this available for folks to download. And we're not there yet. There's still some issues that have to be resolved, because why? We want it to circulate, but it's not official. This is not an official text. And once you let it go officially, there's no calling it back, right? Once you release it to the internet, it's there, and it will go as far as its affinities travel. So before we send the sutra out, and with our blessings, we want the sutra to go far and wide, but it has to be certified, has to go through the various committees of the BTTS, the way Shifu, our teacher, set it up. So that's what we're hesitating about. But otherwise, we have this beautiful bilingual, trilingual text, and it's, to tell you the truth, it's actually 4 languages. If you read Bopomofo Goyin Zimu beside every character, and then you can also read the Hanzi, you can also read the pinyin, Hanyu pinyin, the spelling, the ABCs, and over here is the English. So we have a 4 language, 4 writings, 4 script, let's say, 2 languages and 4 scripts for reciting the Pumanpin. And this translation is substantially different from some of the other ones available. That's why we would love to give it to you in a PDF, but we can't not quite yet, till we get it certified by BTTS, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, all right. So I'm going to put my palms together. Namo Banshir Shirja Moni Fo. Namo Banshir Shirja Moni Fo. Homage to the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Dabe Guan Shiyin Pusa. Namo Dabe Guan Shiyin Pusa. Homage to the greatly wise, compassionate Bodhisattva, the awakened being who hears the sounds of the world. Miao Fa Liu Hua Jing, Guan Shiyin Pusa, Pumanpin. Sutra on the Lotus Flower, the Wondrous Dharma, the universal door of the Bodhisattva who listens to the sounds of all the world. Alrighty. We talked about Panjiao last week, the classification of the teachings. We talked about Guanyin Bodhisattva the week before. And today we actually start our text. Now, one of the issues, how do you translate that name? And if I'm going to highlight the Chinese right here, if you see it's Guan Shi Yin. This is the Chinese translation of Avalokiteshvara, Sanskrit name. And how people want to translate Guan Shi Yin is a question. Chinese translator used Guan, contemplate. Contemplate means you look with your mind, right? Everybody follow that? You're seeing, and the character Guan has that, the sight radical in it. We're looking at Guan right there. It's got the Chinese character for vision. It's an eye with legs. Your eye runs right out to what you want to look at. So Guan is you look, you see, but you see with the image maker, not with the organ. Okay. So it's an internal envisaging it. You visualize it inside, right? Guan. So that's good. In English, what do we do in English? Well, what does Guan Yin do? Does she regard? Does she observe? Does she contemplate? Does she see? What is Guan Yin Bodhisattva doing? And then you look at the second word, and it's shi. Is it the world that she's looking at, or is it beings in the world? So is it those who, or where those who are, right? That makes a difference when you translate into English if you want to get it right. And okay, third word, yin. Is it voices? Is it sounds? Is it cries? Is it the requests that are put into voice, right? So you see the problem, right? So it's the awakened being, Pusa, the Bodhisattva. Do we translate Bodhisattva as Bodhisattva? Do we translate as Pusa, one who is awake? Do we transliterate? The Chinese translator, what did they do? They transliterated Pusa, right? They could have said Juezhe, Da Juezhe, the awakened one. They didn't. They said Pusa. So we chose Bodhisattva to follow the Chinese translator. Okay, so that's a start. That's we got one Bodhisattva. What about listens for Guan? What about sounds, not voices? Because why? Those who call on Guanyin Bodhisattva don't all have voices. Some, they're just groaning, right? Some are in sounds of pain. Some are joyful, right? Some want to repay Guanyin's kindness. Okay. Sounds of who? Of all the world. People have tried to translate Guanxi and Pusa into English multiple times since the Pu Menpin made it to the West. And some of the translations are curious, right? Others, what do we have? We've had cry regarder. We've had sound hearer, but that's Shravaka. That's a problem. So many different ways to translate. What we thought was go to Guanyin's vows. Go to the function that Guanyin performs, which is what her vows say. Anyone who calls my name, I will lend a hand. I'll come to rescue. So she's there waiting with 1,000 hands, 1,000 ears, 1,000 eyes, waiting for us to call on her name. So she's there hearing, listening to the sounds of all the world. All right, that was our choice. We could be convinced by somebody else's interpretation and change it in the future. So what about that? Pu Menpin. How do you translate? Pu can mean universal. It can mean everywhere. It can mean all, right? Nobody excluded. Like Man is clearly a door, right? This one in the middle. Oops, come back here. This is, we can look at this in here. There's a door, right? It's like a swinging door. Actually, that's one of the pictograms that says what it is. Pin is chapter of the sutra. So chapter on what? The swinging door, the door to everywhere, the all-sided one. People have translated Guanyin as the all-sided one. And okay, think about a door that opens to everywhere. Wow, Ray Bradbury, right? Welcome to the Twilight Zone. You think you're going through the door, but every time you do, you wind up in space. Okay, what is Pu Man? What does it mean? How do you visualize a door that opens to everywhere? And to my mind, what that means is what? It's the mind, right? The mind that opens to the Buddha nature. So sure enough, Shifu said, Shi Fa Jie Bu Li Yi Nian Xin. All 10 Dharma realms are not apart from a single thought of the mind. So the mind is what leads us into our future rebirth in thought after thought to Buddhahood. That's where we enter through the mind. So that's the Puman. That's the universal door. Okay, well, we're warm now, right? We're on the trail. So universal door chapter probably is going to stick. That's probably going to be our translation that works. But sometimes Pu Manpian is even better. I can't imagine Westerners saying, well, I really love that Pu Manpian of the Lotus Sutra, right? So what will they say? Universal Door chapter. The Guanyin chapter. Some people call this what? The Guanyin Jing, the Guanyin Sutra. Okay, so you can see the challenges, right? We're still working on exactly how to represent Guan Shi and Pusa, Pu Manpian. These are two homemade images. The one on the left, a standing bodhisattva, 16 feet tall, made of camphor wood, 42 hands, 1,000 hands, 11 heads, spectacular image, stands at City of 10,000 Buddhas. The one on the right, with the red robe and the yellow halo and the green willow branch, is the Guanyin Bodhisattva that's on the windows facing west at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. This is a stained glass image created by Carolyn Hansen, Serenity Glassworks. And we're so pleased to be able to offer that to the world in the sutra. When the setting sun shines through that image and onto the Chan Hall at Berkeley Monastery, it is special. Okay, it's our current English translation. We've recited our verse for opening a sutra. People know about this verse. This Kaijingji was, according to the story, originally spoken by Wu Zetian, the Chinese female emperor, the empress of China in the Tang Dynasty, who was a Buddhist and quite a controversial character. Oh my goodness. So she was the one who first gave voice to the Kaijingji. She was a great patron of Buddhist translations. So we remember her. I think that's fascinating that a politician came up with a devotional praise that nobody does without it, right? You have to have it. It became custom. So what kind of interesting karma for the most powerful woman in Chinese history at the time, certainly, arguably to this day. And she was immortalized not for the decisions she made as a ruler, but for the praise that she made for Buddhist sutras. So interesting. Here we are. First paragraph. We ready? I'm going to put my palms together. Here we go. 25菩萨即从坐起，遍袒右肩，合掌向佛而作是言：世尊，观世音菩萨依何因缘，名观世音。At that time, the Bodhisattva, infinite resolve, rose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, joined his palms, and facing the Buddha said, O world-honored one, how did Guanxuyin Bodhisattva get the name Guanxuyin? Okay, this is chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra, and it appears right there, kind of, it's one of the flowers on the string of that is the Lotus Sutra's thread, right? And starts right out with a conversation. There's a bodhisattva, another bodhisattva, whose name is Wu Jin-yi, infinite resolve. And what does he do? He stands up, performs the gestures of respect for someone who's going to ask a question of the Buddha. Okay? Look at the formality here. He stands up, bares his right shoulder, and if you visualize how Theravada monks these days, right? Unless the weather's really cold in North America or Canada or the UK, Theravada monks have a bare right shoulder. It's a style that comes down from the Buddha, right? This is really, you can see right here where that form of dress began. Bared his right shoulder. Why? Some people say to show that they weren't carrying a weapon. Others say it's a form of respect. Because if you circle, there's another ritual gesture called circumambulation. You walk around, right? And if you circle to the right, clockwise, and by uncovering your right shoulder, it is a gesture of respect. I have a picture here. Hold on. Here we are. Not that one. That's not the one I want. Not that one. Just a moment. Here we go. Buddhist. No, not that one. I had it open. Is this the one? Lecture one. Here we go. This is the one I want. Right. Scrolling. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. So here we have two monks. Notice, because it's cold in England, they're wearing lots of clothes, but both of them have bared their right shoulder as much as weather allows. This is Ajahn Sumedho, and he's got his jasha, his kashaya, his robe, chivara, what's it called in Pali? Thai. He's wearing his robe with his right shoulder bare. Sherpa is wearing his precept sash, which bears the right shoulder. Okay, so this is Buddhist fashion, right? But it's the way monks have been doing it in their precept robes since the Buddha's time. Infinite resolve, bared his right shoulder, joined his palms together, and facing the Buddha said, "O world honored one, Shizun, this is a title, Bhagawan. Please tell me, how did Guanyin Bodhisattva get the name Guan Shi Yin?" Okay, where did Guanyin's name come from? Okay, all right. Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva, Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. breaking up the drone of the boys with a little bit of Guanyin chanting. Ujin-i Bodhisattva is our Dharma requester. He gets the ball rolling. He gets the wheel turning. He gets the sutra assembly moving down the road. And the Buddha, on the spot, answers. 佛告无尽意菩萨，善男子，若有无量百千万亿众生，受诸苦恼，闻是观世音菩萨，一心成名。观世音菩萨即是观其因生，皆得解脱了。The Buddha answered, Bodhisattva infinite resolve, good man, if all the countless hundreds of thousands of millions of living beings tormented by misery and pain hear of Guanxuyin Bodhisattva, and with all their hearts invoke her name, Guanxuyin Bodhisattva will immediately respond to their prayers and set them free. Okay. Here's the answer. He says, 善男子, it could definitely be 善女人, could be good woman. The questioner is specifically a male in this case, so the Buddha responds to him, could have responded to a woman equally. If, here's a number, 无量, beyond measuring, 100,000, 10,000, million, 10 million, some people say, living beings, countless, hundreds of thousands of millions of living beings, 受诸苦恼, who are in pain, who are miserable, who are hurting. 闻是观世音菩萨, hear about Guanyin Bodhisattva, and 一心成名, with one heart, with one mind, with a focused intention, right? Intently, you just translate it as intently. You could also say, really mean it, right? 一心, one heart, recite the name. 观世音菩萨, Guanyin Bodhisattva, 其实, right then, on the spot, 观其音声, will listen to their sound, will hear their cries, 皆得解脱. They will be set free. They will be liberated from their pain and worry. Okay. That's the story. There it is. That's the theme of the whole sutra. 顺生救苦, they say in Chinese. Following the cries, she saves us from our misery. All right, what about that? So let's take just a minute. Where else do you get a promise like that? I can't consider myself a religious scholar. I've studied religions, I've read, I've listened to people talk about their faiths. And saviors, plenty, right? Messiahs who come down and carry the believers to salvation. Those stories, there are lots of those stories. But a bodhisattva, an awakened being whose entire focus, whose name comes from her function of chant my name and I'll save you. That's rare. That's really rare. And that's the whole story. That's the story of the Pumanpin. Guanyin Bodhisattva's vows say, if you have trouble, if you are grief-stricken, I will come to you if you call my name. Yixin Chengming. You have to mean it, right? And I will come and save you. How does it work? Well, I have to say it's magic isn't the word. Magic is sort of like no cause, really, except in the hands of the wizard, right? Well, Guan Yin's non-magic magic, her power, her strength, Nian, Bi Guan Yin Li, recall the strength of Guan Yin, comes from her vows and her seeing the situation of living beings while she was a Buddha. Guan Yin Bodhisattva was already a Buddha and recognized that even though she had reached liberation, so many of us were still here in the mud, confused and hurting. So she made a vow to return as a bodhisattva. How about that? And took the identity of the bodhisattva who hears the sounds of the world. All right. I recall being in Taiwan. I forget what year it was. Maybe somebody who was there with us would remember. We were at a place called Muzha, not too far from the Palace Museum that people know, Muzha. And it was bad weather. There was lots of rain that year, not like now. Taiwan is experiencing a drought at the present moment. If anybody wants to transfer merit and doesn't have a place to transfer merit to the high pressure center that's keeping the rain away from Taiwan. The reservoirs in the reservoir in Tainan is at 11% full capacity, 89% empty. Trouble, right? So this year, it was in the 80s sometime. We had a delegation. We were in Taiwan, and we were doing a fahui. Somebody had scheduled us for a fahui in a high school, and it was a municipal high school, city-run high school, and the rain was falling, and it was cold. It was a winter in Taipei, and oh my, when the Sangha was not on stage chanting, and the assembly, all the lay people were in the seats of the auditorium. It was a strange place to try to do a fahui. They had to sit in the chairs of an assembly hall, like a movie small theater, right, in the high school. We were on the stage, the Sangha, and the only place we had to rest was the wings of the stage, just behind the curtains. And it was no place to sit. We had some questions about who booked us into the high school for a fahui. So never mind. There we were, chanting along, and in between the hours of chanting, we had to sit on the floor, leaning up against the cement wall, while the wind whistled through the stage from the stage door that was being open and closed, open and closed. The result was what? Oh, everybody got sick. Oh man, it was hard. And by day number 3, we Sangha members were all pretty much coughing and we all were sneezing and had sore throats. And there was only a few of us, it was our staff there. And we looked at each other and said, "Can you talk? I can't talk anymore. I'm chanted out. I have a sore throat." Right? Sore throat, I can't talk. And so we said, well, what are we going to do? It's 3 p.m. It's Dharma talk time. We're going to exhort the laity and ourselves by speaking Dharma. But none of the Sangha had any voice left. Oh my God, what a situation. We couldn't speak Dharma because we didn't have any voices. So somebody said, okay, here's what we do. Let's ask if anybody has a Guanyin Pusa response story to share. And then somebody else said, hey, that's a good idea. Then somebody else said, no, that's not a good idea. Why? This is a Taiwanese audience and nobody ever talks, right? You ask a question, they look at their feet, right? It's just everybody's shy, everybody's modest, and they don't like to talk in public. Oh, what are we gonna do? Well, we should try it. Okay. So remember, I came out 3 o'clock. Everybody was back from getting a drink of water, and said, we're wondering whether anybody in the audience might be willing to share with us a story that you might have about how Guanyin Pusa, Shun Sheng Jiuku, heard your cries and came to your rescue. Does anybody have a story like that? It would be okay if you'd share it. And I thought, oh man, nobody's going to say a word. Hands went up all over the auditorium. I've got a story. I will share. I have a story. And we're like, whoa, look at that. And then from behind us, one of the nuns who was with us, I think it was either Hung Bun or it was Hung Ran. I forget which one. And one of the Lao Fa Jie, Taipei Fa Jie, one of the original women who was part of the first staff at Taipei Fa Jie, the book distribution center in Taipei. And she said, I can still talk, she says. We said, okay, you hold your story. Don't forget. Next time, raise your hands again. I know who it was. Okay, but we're going to let the Bhikshuni speak first. Okay. Everybody said, okay, good. And so it was either Hung Ban or Hung Ran came out. They were kind of sister nuns. And she took the microphone and everybody, sat in full lotus and got a chance to take a little break from the chanting with our sore throats and all. And she started telling her story. And she said, here's my story. She said, when Shifu first came to Taiwan to create the Taipei Fa Jie Yinjing Hui, the book printing society, none of us could read. We were all, she said, illiterate, she said. Why? Well, many of us had raised families. We had 7 kids. Some of us had more, had 10 kids. And that's a full-time job, So who had time to go to school? We were all married young and just started making a family. So at the same time, however, our kids had now grown up and gone on and started their families. And so we were friends. We were united in our Buddhist faith. And we didn't have any teacher in particular who we wanted to follow until we met Shen Gong Shangren, Master Shen Hua. And there was one in particular, one laywoman she had discovered Shifu, and she said, she called up all her old friends, said, you got to come and meet your teacher. So we did. And Shifu said, I want you all to learn to recite the Shurangama mantra, the Lungyen Zhou. And I want you all to recite the Da Bei Zhou. And we said, we'll start with the Da Bei Zhou, Shifu, it's shorter. So we learned our Chinese at the same time we learned our Dharma, she said. So somebody who could read it would say, look at that, na, nan, wu, namo, ula hudi, namo sadanto, namo hula dano, dola ye. And sentence by sentence, word by word, character by character, we learned to read off the page. We were set free. It was just like the sun rising in the morning, warming up the whole earth after a cool night and drying up. It was just wonderful. The doors opened to us And we were thrilled to be able to enter into the Dharma and enter into the world of books at the same time. So what did we do? She said, we started working, publishing Shifu's sutras and talks. And we made a group. Taipei Fajia began. We found a home in a place called Nong'an Street. And in Taipei, it was an actual warehouse. That's where we practiced. And it was wonderful. And she said, now everybody's like, wow, we didn't know this about the nun. So she says, yeah. And furthermore, we had a practice group. And the practice group would get together on the weekends when we weren't working and our kids were all out playing. We would go get a bus and travel up to Yangmingshan and get to the top and pull out our picnic baskets and eat some pao mian and eat some chao fan and then drink some tea. We'd recite Guan Yin's name and we would come back down. She said, now, don't you know that since we're Shifu's disciples, he instructed us that we should recite all the time. So from the time we got up in the morning, from the time we got on the bus, from the time we got up to the picnic grounds, enjoyed the view, this clear air, clean air, all that time we were reciting the Dabe Zhou, reciting Guan Yin's name. Namo Guan Shi Yin Bodhisattva. She said, reciting all the time. And we really did it. She said, we really did it. Not like people these days, we recited all the time. And it just felt like we grew wings, we were set free because something wonderful was coming through us as we recited Guan Yin Bodhisattva. She said, now look at me, I'm a Buddhist nun. And I know that from the mother and then the grandmother of 10 children who had no other reason to get out of bed other than to take care of young people. She said to go from there to now being a Buddhist bhikshuni who is able to transcend the world. She said, it was those days of reciting the Great Compassion Mantra, I know, that propelled me into the Sangha, that gave me, really put the wind under my wings so that I could leave home. She said, that was the best time. And it was going, yeah, listening to her, right? And then she says, but there was this one day. She said, we got up to the top of Yangmingshan and had a really good picnic and everybody's reciting. And we got into the bus, and anybody who's ever done that, who's ever taken those roads up above Taipei to it's not a big, tall mountain, but it's a big enough mountain. Get up to Yangmingshan, those roads are narrow. She said we were coming down from the mountaintop when the bus lost its brakes. And the driver, who was also reciting Guan Yin's name, stepped on the brakes and stepped on the brakes and stepped on the brakes, and there was nothing. There was just no strength in the brake pedal. And the farther we went down the mountain, the faster the bus was going. And the faster the bus was going, the narrower the road became. And he tried his best, and we were now in the back because it was a small bus called a mianbao che, a bread bus. We knew there was something wrong, and we kept reciting a little more sincerely maybe than before, but we were all reciting anyway. So we're reciting Namo Hola Dano Dolai, and the bus took off into space. She said that bus flew off the road like it was a bird, and we went over the guardrail. The bus flew into space over a canyon. It did a somersault. We all saw heaven and earth switch places. And then bang, into a tree. And we were still reciting. And I remember looking around, and we were still right side up. The bus did a complete 360 somersault, and it landed in a treetop. And the driver opened the door, and he looked down, climbed down, stuck his hand back up and said, "Let's all get out of the bus now." Sure enough, we all left the bus still reciting. Not a single person was harmed. The bus had flown off the road like a bird in space and landed safely in a treetop. Of course, we hurt the tree, but the tree saved the bus, and we all just climbed down. The taller ones helped the shorter ones out of the bus, and we kept reciting. Of course, there were no cell phones, but we just walked to the nearest house, made a call, and we're still reciting Guan Yin's name and Pu Manpian. She says, "I'll never forget that time." And then, of course, I left home. She said, so everybody in the hall is like, "Oh, Namo Guan Shi Yin Pusa." What an amazing story that was to start off our stories. And then after Hung Ban or Hung Ran, I forget who it was, told her story. Oh, somebody, you know, listen to my story of Guan Yin Bodhisattva. And oh man, I'll never forget it. And I wish we could say that we all got better immediately and recited to the end of the week. Actually, we didn't. Some of us were put in bed because of the conditions that we were carrying on. Chanting at the top of your lungs in a high wind on a wet, rainy day is not the way to keep your throat in tip-top shape. But our hearts were indeed full of Guan Yin Bodhisattva's incredible compassion. Stories like that. And the stories, interestingly, were all different kinds of Guan Yin Bodhisattva's compassionate rescue, right? Some were stories about, what were they? Some were stories about seeking children when you were childless, and Guan Yin Bodhisattva's compassion in bestowing children on those who wanted them. Other stories were recovering from illness. That was some of the most common, because as we know, Guan Yin Bodhisattva's vows have a lot to do with recovering from illness. And other stories had to do with being lost and finding your way home, right? Magically, somebody shows up to guide you home at night when you were lost. Here we go. So all kinds of wonderful Guan Yin Bodhisattva stories with tremendous variety in how Guan Yin appeared to save those who recited her name. So in the story about Yang Mingshan, what we heard was there were two kinds of reciting. One was the Great Compassion Mantra, and one was Guan Yin Bodhisattva's name. And the other people who shared their stories that day in Taipei, they all they displayed the whole variety of ways to access, to travel through the Puman, the universal door, the door to everywhere, the gateway to everywhere, right, as they say. Some recited the sutra, some recited the Puman Pin, others recited Guan Yin's name, others recited the Great Compassion Mantra. All of those are equally powerful, effective ways to have Guanyin Bodhisattva's compassion extend a hand to you to save you from whatever is your problem, whatever situation has arisen. Okay? So, okay. This is a true response story. And I went out online today looking for similar response stories. And oh my goodness, there are so many stories of people who, in moments of greatest need, oh boy, you need Guanyin Bodhisattva to rescue you, and there she is. There's Guanyin Bodhisattva's compassion. So, just to say, as we go through the sutra, we're going to, let's see here. There we go, right there. As we go through the sutra, we're going to be looking at these stories gathered. Most of the sources are Chinese, but not all. We have our own set of Western experiences with Guanyin Bodhisattva. So we're going to be sharing those stories as we go. And I wonder whether some of the listeners online here might have Guanyin Bodhisattva stories that they would like to share. Zhonghua Buddhist Institute has collected several stories about Guanyin, says Danny. Okay, thank you, Danny. Let's see now. I'm going to click that. That's at Dharma Drum. There we go. Chunfang Yu, good. Professor Yu is at Rutgers. Wonderful. Excellent. In English. Super. Thank you for that. We'll look into that resource for sure. All right. We're going to transfer the merit. See you next week with the next, moving into the stories of 7 difficulties that Guanyin Bodhisattva saves us from. All right. And one of the difficulties that we're facing right now is plague, pandemic, a virus that has shut down the world. So if we can recite Medicine Buddha's mantra, this is aimed directly at illness. Maybe we can incorporate a Guanyin Dharma as we go. Since so much of Guanyin's healing has to do with healing illness. Please join if you like to add your sincerity. Transfer wherever you see a need. Rain in Taiwan. Ready? Here we go. Om Namo Bhagavate Asajya Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Asaji 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 Samgate Swaha Om Namo Bhagavate Asaja Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tathagata Arate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Om Asaji Asaji Asaja Raja Guru Madhurya Pravarajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Janta Om Asaji Asaji Asaja Samudgate Swaha Kane has asked a question about the difference between the Universal Door chapter and the Dharani Sutra. Will do. We'll talk about that next week. Remind me earlier. Make sure you send a note next time a little earlier, and we'll get into it next week. All right. Thanks, everyone. Be safe. Be well. Keep reciting Namo Dabe Guan Shi Pusa. Amitofo. Bye now.
Amitabha. Cũng nghe chứ. Này tôi tắt, tôi chưa tắt.